Hello everyone, this is Sainath and welcome to Mugiwara Codes. And today the seminar topic of database management system is timestamp based protocol. Before discussing the timestamp based protocol, we need to know what is a transaction and what are the major operations used in the transactions. And for transaction control or transaction management, we use log based protocol, and in log-based protocol, there are various disadvantages. In later, we will discuss all the disadvantages in this. And to overcome the disadvantages in the log-based protocol, we use timestamp-based protocol. So let's get into this seminar. Now let's say about transactions. Transactions are a set of operations used to perform a logical set of work. It is the bundle of all the instructions of a logical operation. Now, as the sentence says, a transaction is an operation used to perform a set of work. So in DBMS, if you want to do a set of work, you have the transitions, which are a set of operations to perform, and a transition usually means that the data in the database has changed. So when you do a transaction, the data in the database is changed. So if you want to change anything in the database, you use a transaction. It is a set of operations by which your work can be done. Next, one of the major uses of DBMS is to protect users' data. Now, the main uses of DBMS are it maintains the data integrity and data backup. So we have four properties called asset properties. So it tells about how we can keep the data integrity in DBMS. So next one, it is done by ensuring that all the data is restored to a consistent state when the computer is restarted after a start. So use database to protect your data and keep it in a right order. So when the system is crashed, you can retrieve the data very quickly by using these transactions. When we discuss the transaction functions, you'll get to know more. Next, a transaction is any one execution of user's program in a DBMS. So by using one transaction, you can change the data in DBMS and the execution is done. Next, one of the important properties is that it contains a finite number of steps. So when you're taking money from an ATM, we have a set of instructions like operations you have to do. So there are finite. You can get your money withdrawal from the ATM is the work, and the things you need to do are the set of the operations, and that is a transaction. Next, executing the same program will multiple times will generate multiple transactions. So when you're using the PhonePe or Paytm, if you make the payment, like if you give money to anyone or anyone send you money, so it is a multiple transactions. So this is all about transactions, and let's speak about transaction operations. The operations are read, write, commit, and rollback. When you use write, you can read the data from the database. When you use write, you can write the data in the database. And when you use commit, the change you have made will be saved as a save point. And when you use rollback, it can go to the save point before you committed. Like when you update the data in the database, you can get a save point there and commit the change. Then when you give the rollback, it will goes to the commit before save point, by which you can avoid the errors and you can go back to the data, or if you have any done mistake, you can use rollback to go to the before point before you use commit. So these operations are used in transactions, like read the data from the database is a read transaction, and to write is a write transaction. And when you use rollback, the data can be rolled back to the save point, which is also a transaction. These are the operations used in transaction management. Now, when multiple users are performing on data, we can have many issues or errors, anomalies coming around. So to avoid that, we use log-based protocol. Let's see what is log-based protocol. Log-based concurrency control is used to control the access of multiple transactions to the same data item. Like when the multiple users are going to perform the operations on the same data item, the data can be misjudged or it can be modified and it cannot be of right. So when we use log-based concurrency control, the it controls the access of multiple transactions on the data, by which the data can be secured and cannot be changed easily. So this protocol helps to maintain data consistency and integrity across multiple users. As we discussed before, it will maintain the data consistency and integrity, which is the main objective of database management system. And this is used when multiple users are going to perform operations on the same data. Now there are two type of logs. First one is shared log. This is occurred when users are performing operations on the shared data, and it is also known as read-only log. In this, we will let the user only read the data from the database and he cannot or he or she cannot do any change to the data. So as the name suggests, it can be shared between transactions because while holding this log, the transaction does not permission to update data. So here the transactions are done, but the data is not modified. It is only read. So in slog, you can only read the data from the database. And from exclusive log, here the data item can perform both the read and write operation. Like the user can perform read and write operations both on the data item. This is exclusive and cannot be held simultaneously. So here the user cannot read and write at the same time. So xlog is used to preventing this reading and writing at the same time. Now, when we are using log-based protocol in exclusive log, both the users wanted to write the data, the transactions are not held simultaneously. So if user one gives the transaction first will be, transaction one will be going to be executed first. So transaction two, which is given by the user, have to wait until the transaction one completes. So here the disadvantages of using log-based protocol are they can cause starvation for the transactions. They can lead to deadlocks. So to avoid this, we use time-stamped based protocols where these disadvantages can be made as advantages. To overcome the disadvantages of the log-based protocol, we use timestamp-based protocol. Here, the timestamp ordering protocol is used to order the transactions based on the timestamps. The order of transactions is nothing but the ascending order of the transaction creation. So before in the log-based protocol, when transaction 2 have to wait for the transaction 1 for the completion, it may go under starvation or more waiting time and it may lead to deadlock. So to avoid this, we use timestamp based protocol. Here, for every transaction, we give a timestamp. Like when you go to the visa check or the visa interview, you will get a time where you will get your chance for the interview. So you will get there on the time to get the or to attend the meeting. So when you do that for visa, we can also use this for transactions. Like let's see, when we have transaction 1 and transaction 2, I give the timestamp for transaction 1 at, for example, 9 o'clock. And for transaction 2, I give it for 9 o'clock, 9:03. For example, 9:03. So the transaction 1 comes to processing at 9 o'clock and completes at 9:03 or before 9:03. But transaction 2 doesn't have to wait until the transaction 1 to complete. It can go, sorry, it can perform any transaction before 9:03. Just it is called at 9:03 to perform its operation. That is the timestamp based protocol. Here we do not have any specific order. According to the timestamp given, each transaction is executed. The priority of older transaction is higher. That's why it executes first. So when I give a transaction at 9 o'clock, the timestamp is higher, so it executes first. The next can be 9 o'clock 3, so 9:03. So it can perform its execution or the transaction can be executed at that time only. Next, log-based protocol used to manage the order between the conflicting pairs. But timestamp protocol starts working as soon as transaction is created. There we use transaction log-based control to manage the order between the conflicting pairs of transactions. But here, according to timestamp, the transactions will be executed without any deadlock or without any starvation or waiting time. So the advantages of using timestamp based protocol are no deadlock occurrence, no chance for starvation, and also no waiting for any transaction. Next, for example, let's see for clear important understanding. Let's assume there are two transactions, T1 and T2. T1 has entered at the system 7 times and transaction 2 has entered the system at 9 times. T1 has the higher priority. So here it is not how many times it is entered, it is like 7. The priority is given or the timestamp is given at 7. So that transaction 1 will be entered at is not 7 and transaction 2 is entered at not 9. So transaction 2 doesn't wait for transaction 1 to complete and it can perform any operation before 9. Next, the timestamp ordering protocol also maintains the timestamp of last read and write operation on the data. So here the timestamp also has the data which tells us the last operation done by the transaction, whether it read the data or write the data or which operation the transaction performed. Let's see how timestamp based protocol works. Firstly, it's check the following condition wherever a transaction TI issues a read operation. Firstly, here it is a sequence like C WTS of X, that is to write operation for timestamp. Next, it is going to denote a transaction of timestamp TI. So this operation is rejected because you cannot write the data without actually creating or denoting a timestamp. Nextly, here it is given in a sequence like after creation or denoting of the timestamp, it can write the data. So then the operation is executed. Next one, timestamp of all data items are updated. When you write the data, all data timestamps are updated. And next, second one, to check the following condition whenever a transaction TI issues a write operation. Before you have checked the read operation. Now we are going for write operation. Here in the sequence, it is given that first the read operation of timestamp is given. Next, it denotes the timestamp TS. So here the operation is rejected. In the next sequence, we can see writing of timestamp, then the denoting of the timestamp of transaction. So here the operation is rejected, and if the transaction is rolled back to the before change, the operation is executed. That is, before, if you perform any write operation, it can be rolled back to the write operation and the next timestamp can be denoted. Here you can see TS of TI denotes the timestamp of transaction. R of TS of X denotes the read timestamp. So that if the transaction is just to be denoted, it is TS of TI. If the transaction is to read, R TS of X. If it is to write, W of TS of X. So in this way, the timestamp based protocol eliminates the deadlock occurrences or the starvation time and waiting time which are occurred in the log based protocol. So timestamp based protocol is very helpful when you are using with the transactions in DBMS. Thank you everyone for listening to this seminar. And if you have any doubts, please do mention in the comments. And hope you understood the timestamp based protocol.